Greetings. My name is Rochelle Fuladi. I will be starting the event with a land acknowledgement, then introduce the event in the context of the groups that are organizing the event. Then Alex Chapman will introduce the speaker, and this will be followed by Professor Cénat speaking. You'll be holding, if you can hold your questions until the end of the talk, that will be great, at which point Alex Chapman will moderate the Q&A. So with thanks. So greetings, I'm Rochelle Fuladi. I am an uninvited person on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Squamish First Nations. I'm on top of what many people know as Burnaby Mountain, which is also known as Squamish, is where the arbutus tree grows. This is a place where I've been for 20 years, and I'm very grateful to live and work here. My family come from many generations, some settler and some, what we would now call Métis. And on my dad's side, I'm Iranian. So I'm very grateful to sort of be in these spaces and think about what it means to be in these spaces and on these lands. So this is extremely poignant, particularly considering this is National Truth and Reconciliation Week, with Truth and Reconciliation Day being tomorrow. So we hold that close. So this is the inaugural event for the JEDAI Workgroup, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Accessibility, and Inclusion Workgroup for the Department of Psychology at Simon Fraser University. We're thankful to the clinical science area for inviting us to work in the organization of this event. We think it's very important. And considering issues around accessibility, my understanding is that closed captioning is available. If you have any challenges with getting the closed captioning to work for you, if you need it, please message the Psych Communications Coordinator, who is listed as a co-host. And one of the things, and also for accessibility and inclusion that we do with these public colloquia, is we record the events in order that people can watch these events and at a later date, perhaps at a speed that they prefer, but also that others can access this information who may not have been able to log on at this particular time. There are many issues around EDI and justice and accessibility that we've tried to take into account. And please, if you encounter any issues, have any concerns or any hopes and dreams for what the JEDAI Workgroup can work towards, please let us know. We're very, very grateful to Dr. Cénat for being our speaker, and we would ask Dr. Chapman to give us the introduction.
Great, thanks, Rochelle. And so I'm very happy to have Dr. Cénat as our speaker today. I first came across him at the annual conference for the Canadian Association for Cognitive and Behavioral Therapies back in the spring. And I thoroughly enjoyed his talk, and I thought, okay, we have to do something like this at SFU as well. And so I reached out to him pretty quickly and was lucky enough that he accepted our invitation. And so Dr. Cénat is a professor in the School of Psychology, and the director of the Interdisciplinary Centre for Black Health and of the Vulnerability, Trauma, Resilience, and Culture Research Laboratory at the University of Ottawa. And he holds the University of Ottawa Research Chair on Black Health. His research focuses on vulnerability, trauma, and resilience, and he's leading major projects on the mental health of Black communities in Canada. I also have read that Dr. Cénat's research occurs all over the world, so Europe, North America, Africa, and that he also is a member of the College of New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists of the Royal Society of Canada. And so thank you so much, Dr. Cénat, for joining us, and we will turn it over to you.
Let me share my screen first. You can see my screen. Let's see. You see my notes or not? You don't see.
It's perfect.
I'm speaking from the Ottawa region, and I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, was present here, which is back on time immemorial. 6 months ago, I received a voicemail from a mother. She said, "Dr. Cénat, please save the life of my boy." I said, "Oh, okay, maybe she thinks I'm a physician. Let me call her back." And I called. She told me her 5-year-old Black boy, since the beginning of the academic year, was called by another 5-year-old boy, the boy with the color of poo. And this boy raised the other boys against him, and always told him, we cannot be your friend because you are the color of poo. She was shocked, the mother. She went to the school, spoke to the teacher, and she said to her, "It is childish breaking. I have nothing to do with it." After multiple months, she went back to the school, spoke to the director, and the director said, "We are confident in our teacher, and we have to let her manage the situation." And many times, her boy talked about suicide. She was shocked, but it was okay. And always she said, "Do not say that because of this, because of that." But she called me when her boy told her, "I know exactly what I can do to kill myself." And the plan he described was very realistic. Let me thank Dr. Chapman for the invitation. An invitation to talk about something that doesn't exist, race. Race doesn't exist. And scientifically, biologically, we just have the human race. And you can say, okay, oh, okay, we are there to talk about something that doesn't exist. So why we are there? We are there because we have a lot of people in the Canadian society, more than 1 out of 4 people. They are experiencing behaviors, attitudes that hurt them, and that behaviors, attitudes prejudices, they are related to the color of the skin. And I have this question for you. When it comes to racism, are you non-racist or are you anti-racist? The teacher was non-racist. She was not a racist person because she did not perpetrate herself racism. But in fact, when you are just non-racist, you can assist to racism or racist act and do nothing. And there are people who are anti-racist. That people, when they see something which is racist, they denounce it, they talk about it, they try to educate people, and they try to proactively combat racism. And in fact, some people think, and I'm part of them, there is no difference between a non-racist and a racist person. Because if you see someone being humiliated because he is in his knee and you do nothing, you have to question yourself about your attitude on this aspect. But what we have to also understand, we are in a society with a history of racism, a long history of racism, of slavery. We are in the week of reconciliation, and we can talk about residential schools, about the Chinese population, and the fact that during years, we had bill which prevent them to just buy a house in Canada. We can talk about the Japanese population during the Second World War. We can talk about many aspects, but we can also talk about what is happening now, and the fact that in schools, healthcare settings, people from racialized communities still experiencing racial discrimination. What is racism? Let me start with that video. We will watch 4 minutes. It is a video from the lab, the training Becoming Anti-Racist. It is, first of all, for adolescents, but I'm sure we will learn things on this video.
Hi. What do you see?
You are able to hear? Perfect.
Who am I? Do you see a woman? Or do you see a Black person? And if you do see a Black woman, what does that mean to you? Racism exists in every level of society, from individuals to the highest social structures. I challenge you to become anti-racist. Yes, you. How will you do this? By watching me, you will be able to recognize the different categories of racism and racial discrimination, understand the historical impact and ongoing legacy of racism in Canada and white privilege, identify racial discrimination and harassment in different spheres of society, and conceive the consequences of racism. Pretty heavy stuff, but there's a good ending for you. After you learn all this, you get to apply your knowledge. I'll show you what to do against racism, the benefits of living in a society without racism, and how to commit to being anti-racist. Come, let's begin. Number 1, what is race? The concept of race is often linked to a person's physical characteristics such as skin color, nose shape, eye shape, hair texture, and others. However, race does not exist. You heard that right. Race does not exist. Many scientists have shown that classification by race has no legitimate biological basis. There is only the human race. You see, we're really all one. Why is race still talked about? We talk about race because people attribute traits and characteristics to people based on how they perceive them because of the color of their skin. Giving meaning to biological characteristics to identify people is to assign them to a general category of people or groups. This is called the process of racialization. Number 2, racialization. Racialization is the process of the social construction of race that allows for the domination of one group over another, whereby societies view races as different and unequal socially, economically, and politically. The process of racialization is therefore intended to differentiate, inferiorize, and exclude those who are considered non-white. It should be noted that the process of racialization usually excludes white people, at least in Canada. Whites are considered the norm, the reference, the universal representation of all humanity, while non-whites are perceived as different, exceptions, particularities. Number 3, racism. What is racism? Racism is defined as a form of prejudice that includes implicit or explicit beliefs, false assumptions, and ideologies of superiority towards one racial group over another. Racism can be explicit or implicit, meaning that it can be manifested either directly or indirectly. Examples of explicit racism are racist comments, threats of physical violence, and actual violence against a racialized person. And racist cyberbullying through information technology and social networks like Facebook, Twitter, and racist websites. Implicit racism are racial microaggressions. They are brief, verbal, or nonverbal behavioral and environmental everyday indignities that may appear trivial, intentional, or unintentional, which communicate racially hostile, derogatory, or negative insults and remarks to the target person or group. Although these racist behaviors are subtle in nature, they are just as painful for the person experiencing them, especially as it is difficult to prove them. Have you heard any of these statements? I get them all the time. Where are you from? I'm not racist because I have Black friends. Everyone can succeed if they work hard. By the way, in case you're wondering, I'm from Halifax.
I will share with you the website, and you can go watch all the videos. There are 4 different videos.
Hi.
When we are talking about racism, I want to maybe say some words about the definition. For me, racism is a system of beliefs, what we call racial prejudices, practices, what we call racial discrimination, and policies based on race that operates to advantage those with historical power, white people in Canada, and most of other Western nations. And one of the things I want to note is the systemic aspects. Without the systemic aspects, there is no racism. It will be like something which is just interpersonal, like other kind of trauma. But in the case of racism, it is really systemic. In the case, I give always that example. If I'm I don't know, if I'm in the street and a person who is 80 maybe take his bag because I'm there, it will be a little bit normal, because always, if you just read the media, when you see the word Black, you see the word gun, you see the word violence, you would just say, and we are fueled by all of this. And all of this create that system, which is we are in that system, which is racist. And it is also important to recognize aspect which is institutional, because a lot of people who, from the Black communities, for example, I will talk later about this, but in a survey we did, we conducted, 53% of people from the Black communities declared having experienced major racial discrimination in the healthcare system. So when we are talking about 53% of people, it is important to understand, like, it is not just the person, like the nurse or the physician, who is racist. It is about the system, but also about the institution and how our institutions are organized to reproduce that racism. There is also interpersonal racism, where people do it like one person when someone is racist. But there is something that is also very important, which is internalized racism. Internalized racism is the situation that occurs in a racist system when a racial group oppressed by racism supports the supremacy and dominance of the dominant group by maintaining or participating in the set of attitudes, behaviors, social structures, and ideologies that underlie the power of the dominant group. You will find that person from the Arab communities saying, oh, you know, I'm living in a really great neighborhood with no Arab people. Because the person internalized the fact that, oh, if there are not a lot of Arab people and there are a lot of white people in my neighborhood is supposed to be a good one. We internalize it, and we are acting the way to perpetuate what the dominant group is doing. And about microaggressions, they are subtle, and sometimes people think, oh, they don't exist. But sometimes they are brief, commonplace, but in a daily basis. Sometimes they are verbal, sometimes they are just some attitudes. And people always tell me, oh, I'm not racist. I just asked the person, where do you from? Where do you come from? Yes, you can ask this if it is the context. I'm talking with Dr. Chapman and Dr. Fulati, and I said, oh, we are there. No person asked to someone else where he's from, but because he's Asian or because he's Black, oh, where are you from? Why to that person? And that person said, oh, from Montreal. Oh, I know, but where do you really from? So we think we have to exclude that person to the national community. That person, because he's Black, because he's or she's Asian, Arab, or Latino, that person cannot be from the national community. And sometimes people say, oh, it is something that is, it is not a problem. Yes, it is a problem. And I really like this video, just a 2-minute video, because I think it reflects well what people from the racialized communities are living when we talk about racial microaggressions.
For people who still don't think that microaggressions are a problem.
Oh, you're so well spoken.
Oh, just imagine, instead of being a stupid comment, a microaggression is a mosquito bite.
Ugh, it's a compliment.
Mosquito bites and their itch are one of nature's most annoying features. But if you're only bitten every once in a while.
No, where are you really from?
Cleveland.
Sure, it's annoying, but it's not that big a deal. The problem is that some people get bitten by mosquitoes a lot more than other people. I mean, a lot more. Whether it's on a date.
Oh, your English is so good.
Excuse me?
Going grocery shopping.
You know, everything happens for a reason.
I'm just buying apples.
Commuting to work.
So when are you going to have a baby?
Watching TV.
We have to keep the Redskins name. It's part of our culture and history.
Or just walking down the street with your partner.
I couldn't even tell you were gay.
Mosquitoes seem to pop up everywhere.
John, shopping advice. I'm sure too.
And getting bit by mosquitoes every goddamn day,
Touch your hair.
multiple times a day.
Pretty.
Can I touch it? Can I?
It's fucking annoying. And makes you want to go ballistic on those mosquitoes, which seems like a huge overreaction to people who only get bit every once in a while.
It's just a mosquito bite. Who cares? Just another angry black woman.
Of course, beyond just being annoying, some mosquitoes carry truly threatening diseases that can mess up your life for years.
Astrophysics? Maybe you should try this challenging major.
Ow, my dreams.
And other mosquitoes carry strains that can even kill you.
He looked like he was up to trouble, okay? I felt threatened.
So next time you think someone's overreacting, just remember, some people experience mosquito bites all the time.
You're all so exotic. Wow.
And by mosquito bites, we mean microaggressions.
Yeah.
For people who
And if you want to see, for example, in that article we published in 2022, more than 90% of people from the Black community said they experience racial microaggressions once a week to multiple times during the month. So we are talking about something that exists. And one of what you have to think also is the fact that when people experience racial discrimination, at a certain point, it becomes like another trauma, like another some interpersonal trauma, for example. And racial trauma in general refers to dangerous experiences related to threats, prejudices, racial discrimination, humiliation, and guilt associated with various types of racism. And when you experience racial discrimination, and you can talk to this about a lot of Black folks. And I can give you my own example. If I have to go to Montreal from Ottawa to go to Montreal, usually if I'm with my wife, she will be the driver. And if you want to know why, it is just because I know multiple times I was stopped by the police, and I know if she's the driver, there's less chance to be stopped by the police. So that makes you hypervigilant, and you are in that situation where you are hypervigilant, you experience something and you dream about it, you continue to, and it works like it is a real trauma. And the cumulative aspect is also important. But one of the aspects also which very important is the constant aspect, because you still experience it multiple times in your life, and it is usually in a daily basis. So when we are also talking about racial discrimination and racial trauma, it is also important to see the combination of stressors, but also the cumulative aspect, in the fact that it is something that is historical, intergenerational. You are experiencing something that if we take, for example, Indigenous people, you are experiencing something that your father experienced, your grandfather experienced. And you are not the only one. Your community is experiencing the same thing. So sometimes it is you are broke yourself, but your community also is broke because of the same thing. So you cannot be resilient just because of your community if there is not a work in your own community to think about racism, but also to heal from racism. All of that aspects bring us to understand, like, when we are talking about racial discrimination and racial trauma, one of the the results you will see in the scientific literature is the fact that people who are experiencing racial trauma, they experience the same symptoms of those who experience interpersonal trauma and other kind of trauma, the same symptoms of PTSD. And I will talk later about our results on this. But let's see how this happened in general.
See, this is why you don't say nigga. This is what happens.
Man, this is not my fault. You and your friends show up places uninvited and cause all these fucking problems. Are you a student here?
What?
We've had some complaints. Are you a student here?
Yeah, I'm a student. My tuition pays your fucking salary.
He's a student here. We just got into a little tiff, that's all. This is my house. I'm gonna need to see your ID.
Oh, you need to see my ID.
Son, I said ID.
I'm not your son.
Reggie, do what he says. Officer, he's a
I'm
student.
not talking to you. I said show me some ID. He's a student.
Why the fuck do you guys have guns? Did I stutter? Show me some ID.
No, what? Show me that when I asked, because I avoided all that. Okay, party's over. You don't live here, go home. Come on.
Together.
It is not because we have more racism. It is just because now we have camera and we can film easily. We asked two people from the Black communities in Canada, aged 15 to 40 years old, to tell us about how they are living, how they are experiencing racial discrimination in a daily basis. Whatever the items you consider, we have more than 60% of people who say they experience racial discrimination a few times a month to almost every day. Whatever the item you consider, at least 60%. And we try to see how this impacts the prevalence and symptoms of depression. What we found is, first of all, you can see there is a continuum of the evolution of depression, depending of the level of racial discrimination experienced. But also, what is the most important is the fact that those with a very high level of racial discrimination are more than 36 times more likely to experience severe symptoms of depression compared to those with low level of racial discrimination. 36 times. And we also observe the same thing for anxiety and also for PTSD. In PTSD, I want to note something. When we, in the model, we include traumatic experiences. The model explained 26% of the variance. When we put the 3 variables of racial discrimination, the model explained 52% of variance. And we also put all the social demographic characteristics. And this said, racial discrimination better explain symptoms of PTSD among Black people compared to traumatic events, which are car accidents and sexual violence and other aspects, or other interpersonal trauma and other kind of trauma. So that kind of results are very important. And one of the things also which is very important is traumatic psychosomatic symptoms, which, because in the Black communities, for example, a lot of people who will experience mental health issues, their body will speak for them. They will not experience symptoms usually people experience, but they will experience symptoms in the body. And we also try to evaluate major racial discrimination. And when we evaluate major racial discrimination, what we found is the fact that usually people from the Black communities, most of them experience major racial discrimination in the workplace, job hiring, racial profiling, education, and other. But one of the things I observed, because I'm talking today at a university, is the fact that education, both high schools and university, is the place where people from the Black communities said they experience more major racial discrimination. Usually, as professors, we said to people, oh, okay, make your grow up and that. And you see that Black person, Asian person, or Arab person, no one would want to take that student in the groups. No one. Sometimes they do their work by themselves if they don't have other racialized people in the group. And we accept this. And it is because they don't want to be with them. Our students, they don't want to be with them. And sometimes because they think they are less smart. And when we look at just compare those who said they experienced major racial discrimination at schools and universities to those who did not, you will see the red bar. They experience more symptoms of depression, more symptoms of PTSD, more symptoms of more low self-esteem. And when we look at the model in general, you will see racial microaggression explain self-esteem. Even social support can be a good predictive factor. And it is the same thing for somatization and suicidal ideations. One of the things also which is very interesting is the fact that people from the Black communities, they don't want to go to the mental health services because of racial discrimination. And those who try to use them, most of them said they don't want to use them again. So the question is, how adapted is our approaches to treat racial trauma? I will speak, I could speak about psychodynamic approaches, but I choose to speak on CBT because I know our programs in Canada, we are more CBT than psychodynamic. And a lot of people think, oh, CBT is well adapted. And I think also it can be adapted because of the non-judgmental aspects, the collaborative nature of CBT, but also the fact that there's an emphasis on the empowerment of the client. And people from the racialized communities, they need to be empowered in care, but also because it is possible to adapt CBT. CBT is more adaptable to cultural and racial issues. And if we make some efforts, we can make this possible. One of the things we have to accept in the literature, the scientific literature is clear on that, is the fact that CBT is less effective for people from the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in general. And if we want to know why, we have to also think about the way we train people and the way we conceptualize CBT. And the way we conceptualize it help us to understand there are 5 failures. First, the concept of neutrality. We cannot be neutral when we are talking about racial trauma. When I have someone in my office, I cannot be neutral when I know that kid can experience racial discrimination. And if I know that, I have to be proactive and ask about that, because I know that can be part of his problem or her problem. And also the concept of universality, because what is you think is universal cannot be really universal. I always take that example. We want to evaluate intelligence, and we take the Wechsler for children, and we go to Jamaica with it, and we ask to children about the seasons. But in Jamaica, in January, you have 30 degrees. They don't know about seasons because it is not important for them. But if you have questions about the sea, they will be very smart. And if you ask to my kids about the sea, I don't think they will be more smart than someone in the Caribbean countries. And it is our concept of universality, we have to question it. A friend of mine called me saying, like, Jude Mary, I have to ask us a kid, and I don't know what happened. He's very smart, but as soon as I start the evaluation, something happened. And I said, okay, do you ask about cultural aspects, religion aspects? Say, no. Okay, I said, okay, ask to the parents. See the parents first and see. And when she asked, it was just because she received many times the kid on Friday, and they are practitioners of voodoo, of certain spirit of voodoo, where people cannot sit on the right, on the left, I'm sorry, during Friday and Tuesday. And the kid was blocked because of this. So we cannot think everything is universal, but also because the CBT approach is Eurocentric and a Eurocentric approach. And sometimes our triangular model is inadequate to address what people think, how people think, and the way they are living, they are experiencing symptoms. But also because we are colorblind, and in Canada in general, we are colorblind. And many times people say, "Oh, I don't see the skin, the color of your skin." But if the color of my skin is part of my problem, and you don't see the color of my skin, it is a racist attitude. So, what we have to think is the fact that usually psychologists, psychiatrists, psychotherapists who are using CBT, they are not well trained. Myself, I was trained in CBT, but also in cross-cultural psychology, in transcultural psychiatry. At no point in my training, people taught me about racial aspects. At no point. And if we do not understand all of this aspect, it is difficult, impossible to address all of this. And I can tell you, we can provide anti-racist CBT. We can provide anti-racist mental health care. And first of all, we have to recognize, to do so, we have to recognize the existence and the consequences of racism in a proactive manner. When I said that, people say, oh, how can I do it? I can do it. Okay. You have that I don't know, indigenous woman, and you say, oh, okay, you know, there's something also. I know a lot of people from your communities, the indigenous communities, experience discrimination, racial discrimination in the racial and cultural discrimination in the society. That can impact also your mental health. And I want you to know, feel free to talk to me about this if you think it is important, and that can help me to understand what you are experiencing. So do not force the person to talk now, but build that confidence. And the person will feel free to talk about this. And when we are talking about racial discrimination, and I published this article about complex racial trauma, because when you look at racial trauma and we look at complex trauma, you will see they are the same, but they are just a difference, some difference because of its origin. And racial trauma is based on something you can't get rid of, your skin color. Racial trauma is founded on an outdated attempt to classify the human race. And also the fact that people from racialized communities, they internalize what they are living in the society, but also the constancy of racial trauma beyond childhood, because people from the racialized communities, they continue to experience trauma, racial trauma. And when you look at the literature, you will see people who are experiencing racial trauma, they have more stress, they have more psychological distress, chronic stress, diabetes, hypertension, but also premature death. And there's that example in the Yale Alumni Magazine. When Clyde Murphy died, they said, okay, but they look at the situation of those in the class of 1970, and they will see people from the Black communities, they died 3 times. They were 3 times more likely to die from those from the white communities. And people say, oh, why? But if you just look at in the US, people from the Black communities, they died young. Even those who are well-trained, who eat well, they die younger than those from the white communities with no secondary degree, high school degree. And we have to understand all of that aspect of the fact that racial trauma is constant, repetitive, inevitable, and cumulative. And we have also to understand that we can do better than what we have as the triangle aspect. And we can see also some aspects related to the environment, but also how people feel or the way people express the symptoms that can be different than what we have usually. And also, to provide anti-racist care, we have to self-evaluate ourselves, evaluate our ideas, and our beliefs also. And sometimes we'll not be able to do it by ourselves. We have to consult someone. And we have to ask the good questions. Are we racist?
Don't need to get gas, but yeah.
What are our own racial biases? There's someone who was the microphone open and talk. Okay. Recognize we all have biases. Do we know them? Do we know how to deal with them? Do we know how to address them? And when we know how to address them, it is a real step to become ourselves an anti-racist mental health professional. And this is also why we designed that training. And the first module is on racial awareness of racial issues, and the fact that we can analyze ourselves, we can develop cultural competence. And also, when we assess the client, we have to assess the client in the good way. And the second module is concentrated to how we can provide anti-racist assessment. And this module provides ways to assess racial discrimination and its implications for mental health. And the fact that we can go to an experiential model of the transdiagnostic approach, where what is the most important is not our tool, not just list symptoms, but what is the experience of that person with that symptoms. And it provides a transdiagnostic approach that includes different perspectives on how to include the racial factors in our assessment. And also, we have to address racial discrimination in our care, but to address it in a proactive way. To do not wait the person to talk about it, but we can talk about it as mental health professionals. But also because let me say that, usually when people come to our office and talk about racial discrimination, usually you avoid it. And sometimes we blame them. Are you sure that is exactly what the person said? Oh, maybe you overreacted, or maybe, and all of this, usually when you do this, they don't come again. And when we recognize things, when we try to address them, be sure like people from the racialized communities, they will understand all of this aspect, and they will also try to collaborate and collaborate with you in the care you are providing. I want to just say some words on something. A lot of time people ask me about cultural competence. And I want to tell you that the way I take it is when you don't know you are incompetent, like you are incompetent and you don't know you are competent, it is, you are not in the step to become anti-racist or culturally competent. But if you become conscious of, aware about the fact that you are culturally incompetent, it is a good step to become culturally incompetent, to become culturally competent. And you have to work on yourself, read, ask to people, and after this, you become competent and you are consciously competent. because you are doing things and you know what you are doing and you know why you are doing them, and you try to continue to do them, and at a certain point it becomes something that is natural in your practice, and you are competent and you are unconsciously competent. And it is the way I see it. But also to tell you, like, a lot of people say, oh, I cannot provide care because I like culturally competent, because I don't know about the culture of that person. They've talked about 3 aspects in culture, and we can also talk about them in race. The first you have is in intracultural aspects. I'm part of the same culture, I know the culture, and I know the culture can be part of the problem, so I will use the culture as a therapeutic lever. Intercultural aspect, you are part of a culture, I'm part of a culture, we are part of different cultures, but I know your culture, and I will use what I know in your culture to help you, to assess you and help you. But also, it can be metacultural. We are from different cultures. I don't know your culture, but knowing cultural aspects can be part of the problem. I will hear from you. I will learn from you how I can use it to help you. So there is no fatality. We can make things happen. And I want to finish by saying that there are multiple aspects we can apply to provide anti-racist care, but the first one, we have to recenter our approach, center our approach to people, not to our tools. Like as CBT, we have to do this, and this. But first of all, see, okay, is that to ask us if that will work to the person we have in face of us, if that will work to that person, to his community, and if that will address his feelings, but also what he's experiencing as symptoms. We have to remind that all phrasing, race relations, racial casteism, racial justice, racial profiling, white privilege, and even white supremacy serves to obscure that racism is a visceral experience that dislodges brains, blocks airways, rips muscle, extracts organs, cracks bones, breaks teeth. This is what Tennessee quotes tell us. But I want to finish with what James Baldwin said. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We have to start somewhere. But the most important is to start. Start reading, start hearing people, start watching some videos, start to ask. And if we try, we can provide anti-racist care. And the most important is when we are living in a racist society, we are all dehumanized by racism. And if we are living in an anti-racist society, we become more human, all of us. If you need more information, you can go to our website and see the trainings, but also other tools we have. Thank you, everyone. I will stop sharing my screen and take the questions if you have or other comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cénat, for your presentation and really look forward to sharing your resources broadly as we update the JEDAI website for your event and include the video there. Your closing brings us, you're talking about truth, facing the realities. So very appropriate considering the week that we are in and what the work that we all need to do. Just again, thank you so much. Look forward also to the follow-up small group meeting that we're going to schedule at a later date with some of the BIPOC students who have been part of this event. And with that, questions, Alex Chapman, Dr. Chapman will moderate those. Thank you so much again.
Thanks so much, Dr. Cénat. And so people are welcome to use the raise hand function and speak their question or put it in the chat, either way. So Megan, I see we have a question from you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for your talk. It's so wonderful to listen in. One of the things that I was wondering about, and I have to say that I'm not in clinical psychology, so it could be even that my question is tone deaf. I am in psychology, but more on the quantitative side. But one of the things that I was wondering about was just in this talk about anti-racism when we're approaching CBT, I wondered if you felt or saw any sort of racism even in the format of therapy itself, this assumption that sitting across from someone one-on-one is suitable, or assessing people with particular measures. I've heard from at least Indigenous scholars, that this idea that we're supposed to confide in a stranger is absolutely bizarre, and it's actually gets in the way of that sort of, I guess, relationship building. And basically, I'm wondering if the formats that we see in academia are it's almost a funny selection of what we think is valid for therapy to begin with, instead of, say, a group therapy situation or whatever that could look like, because I can't speak to that. But I was just wondering what your opinion about that might be, or if you see any flaws just in the default way of setting up the clinician versus patient relationship.
Thank you for this question. And we have to first recognize that the therapeutic context reproduces the power context in general, where you are the person who knows, and there is the person who's seeking for care. That being said, we have to ask to people what works well for them. And those you who read Evin Yalom know that sometimes we have to think about the therapeutic context as an artistic context, where we are there to collaborate. And it is like a dance. It is like a tango. And if you think you are there and it is that set what you will do, and there is no place for changes, there is no place for the artistic aspect, where the collaborative aspect, and to sometimes go to the person and understand for that person, maybe we will work. We cannot just sit and work. We have to do other things. For some people, they have to be in group and be empowered by that group to be able to process. For other people, they need that one-on-one, but they need that one-on-one and they don't want to come and just talk. First, they want to be able to paint, and then they will talk. maybe they want to talk about other things, not the symptoms directly, but other things first, about the culture, about what is important for them. And I think there is way for creation in the therapeutic process. And those who have success taking in care, people from racialized communities, these people, they have space for creation. And I think CBT is something that we can adapt. And if we just have to see the context, keep the core process in our work. But yes, CBT is something I think we can adapt. But we have to think about not just the CBT where people are really religious about the principles, but to go and see the creative space we can include in our work with people.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Other questions? Feel free to use the raised hand thing or put them in the chat.
If there is no question, usually we don't have questions when we talk about racism. And it is sometimes because people are afraid. They have a lot of questions, but they are afraid to make mistake. Let's say we are in a safe space and try.
Moran, you've got a question. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. I just had a question. So, for example, I know CPA recently published their new guidelines for accreditation when it comes to making sure that programs are making a good step in teaching its trainees with like racism and like indigenous issues. Do you think that where should the responsibility be when it comes to teaching its trainees from moving from now on? Like, should it be? Do you think that, like, obviously, like, as trainees, we should also make a step towards learning, but also should we also expect the programs themselves to provide us with training to this specific modalities in respect to kind of like cultural competency?
First of all, I would say about the CPA new standards. All of this, even although we knew all of this, the word Black appeared 0 times in the first draft. We had to fight to make them realize it is important to name things. It is like training. Like the university has the universities, they have the role to play, and the students, the trainees, they have the role also to play. Let me give an example. We published an article on teaching cultural aspect courses in Ontario universities. Ontario, you have more than 150 cultural backgrounds in Ontario. And there were 48% of social work programs, they had no courses on cultural aspects. It is unacceptable. But what I also think, when you come as a student, you have your own background. That kid who said to the Black kid, you are the color of poo, he heard it somewhere. It cannot be like some things like he just invented. So what about what you heard from home, from your neighborhood, from your family, and you have to work on yourself. But sure, the first part is from the universities, the programs to be sure like they provide, to be sure that like they provide the courses, but also to be sure like the students, they are exposed to some clients, because you can be a psychologist in Canada and never see a Black person, never see an Asian person, never see a racialized person. It is unacceptable, because more than a quarter of our population, they are racialized. So it is important to expose our students to that people, and also be sure like the care that they are provided is culturally competent. They provide culturally safe space, but also racially responsive.
Perfect. Thank you.
We have another question.
Yeah, there's a question.
Hi.
Oh, okay, you can go. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. First, my apologies for not turning my camera on. I'm not really in a position to show my face, so I'm sorry. I am curious to hear your thoughts about a sort of a conundrum that we often face as clinical scientists, acknowledging that racism is a systemic problem, but working so much at the individual level. And it is something that I contend with a lot too, is how do we address the systemic and the institutional and structural nature of racism when we feel so disempowered by the current systems so much of the times. And I'm really curious to hear how you approach that perhaps internal battle, and hopefully get some inspiration from you.
Thank you for that question, because it is a really important question. Some colleagues think, okay, we are working on something that will not disappear in the next days, and people have to navigate in a racist system, and we are trying to help them in that system. But let me tell you, I don't have an answer to that question itself, because the best is to have a society free of racism. It is the best. But it is not for tomorrow. And we can feel that powerlessness providing care to a child or an adolescent, knowing like they will continue to experience this. As a person who worked on cyberbullying and bullying during years, I take it like this. You have to empower your client to be able to continue to navigate. And sometimes to recognize that he can feel himself or herself also his powerlessness, and to be able to seek for support from his community, or to come back to care and try to answer to certain questions. But it is true that we don't have all the power we need to face racism, because it is systemic and we are working with just one person. But sometimes it is a little change, but a change. And we have to continue to work to make the society a better place. And this gives us also another mission, like to do not only work with people like, okay, I'm just a psychologist and that's it, to also to advocate in the society, to be sure, like if we are working in a place, that place from the way we entered from the date we enter to the date we will leave, it will become a better place with less racial discrimination, and maybe a place free of discrimination. So we have an advocate role to play also, not just the therapeutic role.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I think presentations and conversations like this are probably a part of it too. So thank you so much.
We also had a question in the chat. I think, Jude, you might have seen it as well. So I don't know if you would like to, if you've taken a look at it, if you'd like to respond to that one by Anna.
Yes. I will put the training in the chat for people who ask for the website. It is mentalhealthforeveryone.ca. And if you click on training, you will see the trainings we have, and you can go there and take them. You have to register. Thank you for very much. I was wondering if you will be able to speak a bit more about the fear you just mentioned that often remains the topic of racism. Fear making mistakes. Yeah, and thank you for this question, because we feel like this discomfort when we talk about racism. People feel like, oh, okay, I have to be careful. I don't want to make mistake to appear as a racist person and da. We don't have to be afraid of mistakes, because we will make mistakes. We will make mistakes. We have to, we learned in a certain way, which is obviously racist. And we have to dislearn. And in that process, we will make mistakes. We will think something is anti-racist, but it is not. What is the most important is to create in our program some safe space where people can speak freely, share their thoughts, and have people who can answer to them. Let me give an example. In the School of Psychology at the University of Ottawa, some white students thought, oh, the program became reversely racist because we accept more BIPOC students than white students now. And I can tell you why, because during the last 50 years, the program was about to train one Black psychologist, just one, a Black psychologist. Ottawa is a city with a lot of Black people. And if you want to have a Black psychologist in Ottawa, we are 4. And 3 of us were trained elsewhere, like not in Canada, in the US and in Europe. And how we can accept this? And if we want to make changes, we have to create that safe space where, okay, now we have more Black students, more Indigenous students, more Latino students, but is our program is a safe space for them? And the way you can do it also is to work with that people, to become friend to that people, work with them, and you will learn from them. And when I'm saying become friend, my dear friend Mina Lashley, prof at McGill University, will say, we are talking really about friendship, not people who say, oh, I have a Black friend, or I have an Asian friend. And if you ask them, okay, you have an Indian friend, okay, what is the last time you invited him to come home to eat? Oh, never. And what is the last time you invited the children to come and play with your children? Oh, never. And he's or she's your friend? We have to really be open, and without being open to learn, we will still feel that fear. We we are afraid to make mistake. But if we are in a will, in French we say démarche, if we are in that process, a will process, we are trying to learn, we will do some mistake, but in good faith. For example, for the indigenous communities, I wanted to learn, and I learned a lot, and I made some mistake. I said some stuff that were not really the right thing to say, and I have a friend who is guiding me in that process. She's indigenous, and she's guiding me in that process. And when she hear from me, she's from Jude. No, you know, it is not the good thing to say. We say da 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 in that place, da da da. Okay, cool, thank you. And I'm in the process now. I'm comfortable to taking care of an indigenous person. I was not 3 years ago. So it is a process, and we have to accept it is a process, and in all process we will make mistakes.
We've got a question from Thursday.
Thank you so much for your valuable talk. I have a question about cultural competency. I read the paper about cultural competency and cultural safety for achieving health equity, and they discuss in the paper that culture safety.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm the only one. I cannot hear you. Like,
You
yeah,
can
it's
hear
a
me?
little bit difficult to hear. There's like an echo or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm outside. Yes. How about now? Can you hear me now better?
Still a little challenging.
Is it? So is it?
Fine. Let's try again.
So maybe I can write my question down in the chat box.
That'd be great. Thank
Sorry
you.
for that. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Other questions and thoughts?
So we'll wait for that one to come into the chat, but while we're waiting, if anybody has any quick questions. Yes, Ryan.
Hi, I think I could do this quick one while she's typing. Thanks so much for your talk. And I'm glad it's just a quick one because it's hyper-focusing on a specific data point. But in one of the slides you presented, I noticed that on the harassment measure, that there seemed like a big difference between men and women, where the women experienced way more harassment. And I was just wondering if you had any, if you don't know exactly what graph I'm talking about, because I know I'm hyper focusing on one spot, but I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on that, and if that's like, I could imagine that just women generally are harassed more than men. So I'm wondering if you think that's what that is, or if this is specific to the groups that you studied.
Yeah, it is not always true, but in Canada, in the US, for example, sometimes Black men experience more racial discrimination than women. But in Canada, there is a constancy in our all studies that Black women experience more racial discrimination. And certain groups of Black women, they experience more, more than certain other groups of women. Let's take an example. Black women who declare they are Muslim, they experience more racial discrimination than others who said they are Christian. And I can see the intersectional approach. They are women, they are Black, and Muslim. And that intersectional aspects for me can explain why usually in Canada, Black women experience more racial discrimination than Black men. Another aspect we have to consider is the fact that Black women can feel more free to say they experience racial discrimination than Black men, because sometimes it is about a concern of an issue of power. Because when you experience racial discrimination, you feel powerlessness. You feel humiliation. And this is why, for example, it is easier to stand up for other people who are experiencing racial discrimination than for yourself when you experience racial discrimination. And I think that aspect also we need to consider it. Maybe Black men under declared racial discrimination they are experiencing.
Thank you so much for your talk and for that answer.
So we have Farishta's question in the chat. So it came directly to me, so I'll just read it. So I've read a paper that they proposed cultural safety as an alternative to cultural competency, discussed that cultural competency is about being competent in other cultures, understanding and respecting them, but cultural safety is beyond just being competent and is about addressing power imbalances, historical traumas, and challenging our own culture if needed. It would be appreciated if I could have your opinion about this.
We wrote a paper with Cecile Rousseau, and the title is Safe Enough. We're thinking the concept of cultural safety in healthcare and training. I think it is still important to have to teach cultural competence. Why? Because to be able to provide a cultural safe space, we have to be culturally competent. Being culturally competent, it is not know all cultures. No, it is not to know all cultures. We cannot know all cultures. It is to know how we can address cultures in our care, even we don't know the cultural aspects. Remember when I said Dever said we can provide intercultural care, but also metacultural care. Like, we don't know the culture of the person, but knowing culture can be part of it. We learn from the person. And that being said, we can also talk about cultural humility. And cultural humility is the fact that I know culture is important, but I don't know all about your culture. I cannot know all about your culture, because even I knew well your culture, your family experienced your culture differently than the other family. You have aspects which are related to your family. And in your family, people, they see things like this. And I have to learn from you. Do you know the CFI, the Cultural Formulation Interview? People who have camera, do you know it? No? It is part of the DSM. The last chapter. Go see it. Please go see it. The Cultural Formulation Interview. It is a way, an interview you can use to, and we means to put racial aspects in the DSM-5 revised. And in the next one, we will put, I'm working with a group where we will put racial aspects, and integrate racial aspects is important. But when you, for example, you receive someone and you first ask to the person, okay, how I can call you? How you prefer I call you? Oh, Ramala. If you read it yourself, you will say Ramala. And the person, Ramala. Okay, I will call you Ramala. And that makes a real difference. When you call that person, you feel not a stranger, a foreigner for that person, because you call him as his mom, his dad, his sister, his brother. Does he call mine? So we ask for this. And then, okay, how in your culture, how you explain what you are living? And the person explained to you. So you are here to hear from that person, to understand his own perspectives, their own perspectives on what they are living. And you are able to create that safe space. But without cultural competence, I don't see how we can create safe space. So cultural competence, it is still important to teach it, but it is also important to teach people about cultural humility.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cénat, for such a fabulous talk. And we won't keep you any longer. We know it's 5:30 at your time over there, and I know you've got family obligations as well. So we'll let you go. But thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Do not forget, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We can be anti-racist. Thank you.
Bye.